Welcome into Leveraging Your Reality, where mindset meets movement. I am Siobhan Terrell Camper, your partner in growth as you become a healthier you. I just got off the phone with a client and we were going through her goal setting process, talking about a bunch of different things. But what came up was a fact that happens for many of us. Too often, we are being a no show for ourselves. And when it comes to a meeting or an appointment, oftentimes we show up to those meetings, we show up to those appointments. I mean, unless there is an emergency. I know when it comes to me, if I say I'm going to be somewhere, you don't even have to check in with me to make sure I'm going to be there. I will be there unless there is an emergency. So then it turns up to this question of why don't we show up for ourselves? We are no shows to ourselves all the time. In so many other situations, no showing is unacceptable or just something we don't do. But when it comes to ourselves, it is easy to be a no show in many different ways. And I want to talk about some reasons why we get into the trap of not showing up for ourselves. The first one is around oftentimes we set unrealistic expectations. And the way we're most unrealistic is not the size of the goal, but the size of the start. Your ideal is not supposed to be your start. So if ideally you want to record on YouTube Live 5 times a week, your start can be as small as once a month or once a week. When we are allowing ourselves to start at our ideal, we haven't built up enough muscle to continue at that ideal right away. If you take it into physical, if you want to run a marathon, right? You're probably not going to just get out there and go run a marathon, especially if you haven't been a runner for the last 15 years. What you will do is start small. You're going to have to build up your capacity for long distances. And it's similar when it comes to being in relationship with ourselves. This thing that we want to have, this expectation that we have for ourselves, is possible. It's even possible for us to be consistent with it. But it's usually not possible on day one. And that is just realistic. Another reason why we tend to be no-shows for ourselves is one of my favorite topics to talk about is because we don't consider the relationship with ourselves as an actual relationship. And this leads us to having little to no standards in relationship with ourselves. But when it comes to relationships, whether it is with a spouse, a coworker, a family member, a child, there are expectations around those types of relationships. How you show up, how you won't show up, what you will do, what you won't do. And if we don't qualify the relationship with ourselves, there are no expectations. So we could treat ourselves however way we want to treat ourselves because it's not categorized as a relationship. But the moment that you categorize the relationship with yourself as a relationship, there are some things that become just a no or yes. And I'll give you some examples. If you're in relationship with yourself, all right, bullying is not something that you allow yourself to receive in relationships. So all those moments when you're out there bullying yourself, that has automatically become a no, that is not allowed in relationships that I encounter, including the one with myself. Flipping it over when it comes to these no-shows. This will be a thing where, I show up for me because I show up in every other relationship that I'm in. So I'm going to show up for me. So it is so important that we see that with ourselves, we are actually in a relationship. This will naturally create standards for how you are going to show up in that relationship with yourself. Another reason why we don't show up for ourselves is over time, we've lost faith and trust in ourselves. And it has come from many different reasons. One, not showing up for ourselves, the topic we're talking about today, but it also comes from a series of disappointments. Not showing up for ourselves leads to disappointment. When we're disappointed in a relationship, sometimes it can lead us to like, oh, whatever, I don't care. It is what it is. And we lose hope and faith within ourselves. Now that we've talked about the different ways of why we don't show up for ourselves, we want to flip it on the other side and talk about how you can start showing up for yourselves. There is one relationship that you will be in for the entirety of your life, and that is the relationship with you. If you believe in a higher power, then that is also a relationship with your higher power. But you're with you the entire time. You cannot get rid of you. So a way that you could start showing up for yourself is by being realistic with your expectations and being willing to start small. Excuse me. But when you're being realistic with yourself, it allows you to not only show up for you, but to also show up for you more consistently. And a lot of times we can show up for ourselves, but we end up taking breaks. And then breaks turn into hiatuses. And then hiatuses turn into sabbaticals. And then we have years and decades. Oh, excuse me, I got a little tickle in my throat. Then we end up with years and decades of not showing up for ourselves because from the beginning, we were unrealistic with our expectations. Now, for real, a part of me wants to stop this whole thing and start it all over because I'm coughing. And that is like a great example of an unrealistic expectation. Yes, I could start over and no one would really know. But why? I'm human. I get tickles in my throat. I cough. I have imperfections. And coughing is a regular human part of life. If I was being realistic, setting a realistic expectation with myself, I would always be trying to get these lives to be perfect and trying to present something to you all that is not real. Like, yes, I cough, people. I'm human. You cough, you're human. And it's not you I need to convince of my humanity. Often it's myself that I need to convince of my humanity, that there will be mistakes. There will be things that we say that we don't mean. There will be things that we wish we could erase altogether. But life is not about trying to live perfect. Life is about continuing, but continuing from a place of growth. And in order for one to have to grow, there has to be a lower moment. And sometimes those lower moments aren't our finest, but if we grow from them, they turn into an opportunity for us to leverage where we are right now in the moment. Another way that you could start showing up for yourselves, or we could start showing up for ourselves, is to treat ourselves the way we would treat someone else in relationship. And it's such a simple yet real point of there are things that I may say to myself that I wouldn't ever say to someone else in a relationship. Those are the things that need to go. Because if I can't say it to another person in a relationship, I probably should not be saying it to myself. It's similar with doing things. There are certain things that I will not do in an external relationship that I may have been doing in relationship with me. It's time for that thing to go because that's not something I do. Just like in other relationships, probably not always being negative. Okay, so that means in our head, we probably should add a bit more positivity in there. Because if you're not showing up to all your other relationships in this negative, constant negativity, that also means give yourself that same favor. The next one is around I really want there to be a clear understanding of the difference between expectations in childhood and adulthood. In childhood, things happen fast. Like the goal is a piece of candy or to hurry up and get outside to play. And we have been taught that you get to go outside when you handle all of your responsibilities. You get to have that piece of candy after you've eaten all of these other things. And it works in childhood because there are smaller timelines to the goal. When we get into adulthood, our timelines dramatically expand. And it's because we've grown, we've learned, our goals are bigger. And if our goals are bigger, they take longer. Sometimes we have the patience level of a child level goal. Like, it's one thing to say, I want to get my room clean, and it's another thing to say, I want to own a house. You can't come in with the same patience level as finishing cleaning a room that you have with preparing to buy a house. That's two different levels. One of the transitions people really struggle to make is when we get into adulthood, all the responsibilities, they don't necessarily finish. They're ongoing. And if you're waiting in order to take care of yourself, in order to rest, in order to have some creative time, in order to have some social time, to have all your responsibilities done, you're going to find that in your life, there'll be less time for you. There'll be less time for social. There'll be less time for fun, joy, excitement, because you're trying to get all the responsibilities done and they don't get done. Yes, that one item might get done, but right after you finish that one item, you probably added 3 more items onto the list. So the list continues. And here's a tip too. I don't know if I've said this in a live stream before or not, but either way, it's worth repeating. We oftentimes operate off of our to-do list. Every day we look at this to-do list, we decide what are we going to do, we check a few things off, and every day we also add to that list. To-do list works like my relationships with laundry. It took me such a long time to accept that laundry is continuous. It just keeps going. The moment you finish washing and folding, someone has taken a shower, possibly you, and something else is in the laundry basket, and laundry continues. That's how our to-do lists are. They continue. I remember there was a point in time when I had first started my business, and boy, I was stressed. I was so stressed, and I was approaching everything with stress because I wasn't getting things done. I wasn't seeing the results that I wanted to see. And my husband gave me a tip that is, I still use it to this day. He essentially taught me how to break down, and instead of having an unrealistic expectation of you're going to get all these things done, choose one thing that will make the day a win. And when you choose that one thing and you do that one thing, you've officially won the day. It doesn't mean you're not going to do anything else. It just means that everything else you do is extra. What this allows for is the opportunity to celebrate progress. Because if we're waiting to the end of many things, sometimes we won't see celebration for years. Some things take a long time for us to get the results that we want to get. And in the meantime, if we don't have these progress opportunities along the way, it means that we're also missing the opportunities to celebrate the progress. This is why when I do goal setting with people, part of the goal setting process is about identifying what progress looks like. So when we come in and we check in 3 months later, 2 months later, we are able to not just look at where you want it to arrive, we're also looking at how have you been making progress on that journey. And most people, after we check in after 3 months, or even after we check in a year check in, most people will not be at their arrival destination, but they will have made progress. And when you have a list of 25 things and you check in after a year and you have at least 5 to 10 of those things done, it's exciting and it makes you want to keep going. You feel like I'm winning, it's worth going. But if you don't have that progress set up for yourself, it is so easy to feel like you're not making progress. But if you take a look back, you usually are making progress. So I really, really challenge you all to check yourself. Really look at the ways that you're not showing up for yourself. And when you realize those ways you're not showing up for yourself, also check, what were my expectations in that situation? And see if your expectations were realistic or not. 9 times out of 10, you will probably see that your expectations were realistic, which means you set yourself up for failure right from the beginning. Let's start setting ourselves up for success so that we can show up for ourselves more and more often, the way that we show up for other people in relationships. Remember, growth isn't always easy, but when you're doing it together, it becomes more possible. If you found this valuable, hit subscribe, share it with someone who's on a journey, because we don't grow alone, we grow together. Until next time, keep showing up for yourself and keep leveraging